Hi, my name's Sat, and welcome to this video where I'll be giving you a whirlwind tour on how you can quickly and easily use StartMail to create unlimited email aliases for your personal domain. Along the way, I'll share a bit about why I ended up using StartMail after using lots of different email services over the years, in case that helps you. If you're in a rush, I have timestamped the various sections of this video so you can quickly jump to where you need to. And finally, I've placed links to any articles and resources I've discussed in the video below in the description box, along with my contact details if you want to get in touch. I'm going to begin with a brief journey on why I started looking for a new email service this year to either fully replace or run alongside Google Workspace Starter Edition. So I started looking at the beginning of this year because in 2026, for those of you watching in future, because I was getting frustrated with lots of things about Google Workspace and also things like Microsoft Outlook as well, which I'll discuss in more detail later on. But before I dive in, I think it will be really helpful to begin by explaining why I signed up for Google's G Suite as it was back then in 2013, so that I could create my own email addresses. So the story begins way back when I first signed up for an email account with Yahoo back in 1997 when I was at university, and then Hotmail in 1998, and then Gmail in 2004. Now, as you can imagine, each time a new email service was launched, this introduced overhead when it came to updating my email addresses with the various websites and newsletters that I'd signed up for. Now, in the early days of the internet back then, this wasn't too much of a problem because there weren't that many online services, first of all, and of the ones that there were around, I hadn't signed up for everything anyway, so it wasn't too much of an issue. But after I made the jump to Gmail in 2004, I realized that eventually I will need to control my own domain name because I don't know which technology companies are going to be around in future and which ones will offer the best services and functionality in future as well. But the problem in the 2000s, for me personally, was that it was still a pain to set up and host your own email. And I couldn't really justify spending a large amount of time learning how to do it in my spare time because the utility wasn't just there for me back then. Thankfully, this changed in 2013 because G Suite was launched by Google and it was fairly straightforward to set up for a reasonably technically capable person like me. If you just follow the steps, it's quite straightforward. And I thought that once I'd done this, it would be the last time I'll ever need to update my email address to all of the different services I'd signed up for. And within 12 months, it became apparent that that was absolutely not the case. Now, I did keep an eye out for alternative email hosting solutions since 2013, but never really found a service that would let me quickly and easily create unlimited email aliases. And this changed in 2026 when I decided to have another look at what was available on the market. And in the biggest irony of all, I asked an AI chatbot in my Brave browser and search engine what the latest solutions were, and StartMail popped up along with Fastmail and ProtonMail, and I'd never even heard of StartMail before, so that was a good result. So I used this as an opportunity for a fresh start, to be honest, because it gave me a chance to ask, what is the purpose of email in 2026 and beyond? While I was looking for these alternative email solutions, I watched some interesting YouTube videos about aspects of email that I hadn't really thought about deeply or even considered at all. And the first one was that simply, what is email for today in 2026 and beyond? If I was going to spend the time and energy setting up a new email platform and a whole bunch of email aliases, then it was important to answer this question because a lot has changed since my first Yahoo email account that I opened in 1997. And then that led to the question, well, what is the actual problem that needs to be solved? And when I really looked at my inbox, I found that 99% of my emails were just the digital equivalents of receiving postal mail, faxes, and telegrams from companies. That is essentially all email is today. There were hardly any emails where I was actually communicating with another person. The only exceptions are once a year when I'm doing back and forth with my accountant, or other rare one-off situations such as meeting somebody at a networking event and corresponding a little bit with them afterwards. But other than that, everything's inbound. And this realization made the decision on picking an email platform a lot less taxing. I didn't need to worry about contacts and calendar synchronization because in my mind, I was trying to solve the postal mail and fax organization problem, not a communication and calendaring problem, because Google Workspace is actually very good at those things. And another thing I hadn't considered, I watched another YouTube video where a guy was discussing the pros and cons of email addresses with a domain name based on your own name versus a generic domain name. And I have got a domain name with my own name because it's not a common name. So I'm sort of fortunately in that position to be able to choose. And I never thought about this before, and after watching that video I kind of agreed with the guy that for privacy reasons, especially with all the data breaches now, it's better to use a generic domain name for multiple email aliases. So I simply bought a new generic .net domain name for around $12 because the .com one wasn't available. So that's a summary of the sort of background to the rest of this video that I'm going to present. So I want to move on to the problems that I've been facing with Google Workspace. And they've really started to frustrate me this year. Starting with problem number 1, Google Workspace is not designed for personal use. It's extremely inconvenient to create email aliases in Google Workspace, and this is because the platform is designed to create one email address for multiple employees. It's not designed to create multiple email aliases for one person. For those of you who haven't used a Google Workspace or the Google Admin Console, I want to show you how frustrating it is to set up email aliases using a couple of screenshots from my own personal Google Workspace account. So creating an email alias in Google is a 2-step process. You've got to log into your admin and your email account, and I'll show you that now from 2 screenshots. So first you have to log into the Google Admin Console, and you have to create an alias for an existing person. In that case, that's me here. And these are some aliases I've made up because I didn't want to show you my actual main email address. So let's say you've got newsletters@domain.com, banking@domain.com, etc., etc. So you create them all here in the admin console against your own name. Then you have to actually log into your Google Workspace email account, go into settings, and then recreate them there as well. Okay, and it can take up to a day for these email aliases to become active. And after creating 2 or 3 email aliases all those years ago, I didn't really bother to create anymore because it was too time consuming, a load of hassle, and I just have better things to do with my time, to be quite frank with you, so it's not too complicated. That then led to problem number 2, falling back to email rules and filters. Okay, so this defeated one of the main reasons of setting up my own email with a domain name. So email filters and rules start to fall apart over time because companies know that we users set up filters and rules, and therefore they start to change their sender email addresses for their marketing emails and newsletter emails. And then within 6 to 12 months, you'll find that email filters become unmanageable, and it's just too much overhead and hassle in keeping them up to date. Now, as a side note, Google could absolutely use their billions of dollars of technology to solve this problem, but I think they deliberately don't. And if they deliberately don't, it's just not worth their time because their ad business generates so much cash that pleasing a few email users is not worth their time either, based on other projects that they could earn billions from. The next problem I had was with side hustles and business ideas. So around 2015 onwards, I started to buy some domain names so I can try out some business ideas and side hustles in my spare time after work. And I would usually set up a single email address for those domain names so that I could sign up for websites and payment processing services using the correct email address and appropriate domain. But this turned out to be, unsurprisingly, just as painful as setting up multiple email aliases on my main domain, but I could just about go through the pain of it because I wasn't setting up or trying new business ideas more than twice a year, but it was still horrible to do so. The next problem that's become more prevalent, especially in the last 5-6 years, is data breaches. There seems to be a different data breach every week now, or multiple times a month at least, and it's extremely important that having one email address for everything, including finance, health and tax, to name a few, is a really, really bad idea today. The next problem I've had, especially starting last year in 2025, is just constant email login box prompts. And I found it incredibly annoying to have to constantly re-verify myself and re-logging to email accounts, even on Apple Mail, Microsoft Outlook desktop client and software, both on my MacBook and PC and iPhones and iPads. It's just so annoying because I found it really disrupts my workflow. And on many occasions where I needed to find important information, in email folders to complete an admin task or piece of work, it just becomes a nightmare. And sometimes I would just abandon the task completely because it would just disrupt my workflow so much. Now, the next problem is linked to email is account lockouts. So I first read this story back in 2022 when this story was published. A guy called Luke Curtis wrote an article where he explained how he got locked out of his Apple account because he purchased an Apple gift card from a discount website, which he'd used many times before. But it turned out that that gift card had been marked as stolen. And when Luke activated the gift card in his Apple account and started spending the money, it was automatically flagged by Apple and his Apple account was blocked. So he lost access to all his devices. His boarding passes on the JetBlue app wouldn't work, couldn't stream his music, he couldn't watch his purchased movies or TV shows, and he couldn't download apps for work. He escalated his complaint 4 times to Apple. Each time was put through to a senior support person, and each time they referred him to Apple's terms and conditions. And he only regained access after 2 months because of his journalistic connections. And it turned out that the gift cards had been intercepted and stolen during delivery to legitimate retailers. Now, the same thing happened again in December 2025, recently, to an extremely experienced computer scientist from Tasmania in Australia, Dr. Paris Butfield Addison, his name is. So he had his Apple account locked after using a $500 Apple gift card to pay for 6 terabytes of iCloud storage. He purchased the gift card from a major bricks and mortar retailer, and his iPhone, his iPad and watch and Macs wouldn't sync, update or function properly. So those 2 stories about people being locked out of their Apple accounts. The next one is being locked out by Google. So I remember reading this story at the time during lockdowns, but it's now paywalled. But I thankfully found the article from the New York Times here. And this was a story where, because everyone was in lockdown, a guy's child was having some medical issues, and the doctor had asked him to send some naked pictures of his child so he could assess the medical issue. Now, as soon as he did that, Google's systems flagged him as a criminal because obviously it was flagged as CSAM. And here is the very latest story from last week, or this week actually, in June 2026. Now, this journalist found that her iPhone gave her an explicit content warning after she took a photo of a cat lying down, as you can see in this photo. So this story might sound humorous, but if it leads to you potentially being locked out of your entire digital life, which is of course all centered around your email address, it will be a complete disaster. And we all don't have strong journalistic and commercial connections to people in high places in the tech industry, so it would pretty much be game over if this happened to any of us. So why is this important? If your email account is controlled by a big tech company, you could get locked out of everything in your life, including banking and healthcare, to mention a few. You can't reset anything in your digital life if your primary email address is an Apple iCloud email address or a Gmail or an Outlook address. And this is the same reason your passwords should not be stored within Apple iCloud. I think it's called Keychain for their service, or similar services for Google and Microsoft. Now, that's a different video altogether, not putting all your passwords with these companies, but that's not something I want to go into now. And the final issue for me, which tipped me over the edge earlier this year when I started looking for new email platforms, was AI. So, once I started to see Google Gemini everywhere in my Google Workspace account, I was very uncomfortable with Google's ability to scan my entire private inbox, which includes emails about everything in my life, from finance and banking to healthcare and tax and the occasional family correspondence as well. Now, in a Google Workspace account, as it's a business account, it should absolutely be more private than a standard Gmail account, which is free. But we don't really know how Google systems work behind the scenes. And my argument is, well, why take the risk? If we would just assume that everything's being scanned in the same way as a free Gmail account, treat it that way. So now I want to jump into the benefits of StartMail. I'm going to focus on the main features and benefits for me, and I'll just go through them one by one. So it's got a nice, clean, simple web interface, which I personally like. It's got your folders on the left-hand side, the main settings in the top right, and it's very clean and simple. For those of you dark mode fans, it has that as well. I never use this, but I just switched this on to show you all. This is how your domains would look. These are not mine domains. I just typed them in so that you could see how it looks. You can actually have unlimited domains in your account, which is great when you're trying out business ideas and side hustles, which I'm doing right now actually. And it's been so easy to set things up with StartMail. And in fact, proof's in the pudding here. So one of the email addresses that I set up for this new side hustle is just constantly getting spammed by this SaaS service provider. And I am going to switch it off and just create a new one. So literally it's solving hassle right away for me. Now here is where you can see that you can create unlimited domain email aliases. It takes about 3 seconds to set up an email alias by clicking the purple button that you could see at the top of the screen. And unlike Google Workspace, an email alias is live and operational within seconds. So I've blurred out a lot of my own personal emails, but I've replaced the top 4 with some fake ones there just to see how they look. Now on top of this, you can actually have unlimited StartMail email aliases. So that'll be something like john@startmail.com or something like that. And you can create unlimited versions of those. I personally haven't done so because I'm using my own domain name. But what I have done once is use their burner email alias, which you can see in the middle of the 3 options on the left there. And that's great because if you want to go to a landing page and download a PDF or a guide or something and not be spammed to death afterwards, it's perfect for that, because when you create the alias, you can set, I think from memory, 1 minute or 5 minutes or an hour. So you've got several options there, how long you want that burner email to be usable. So that's been quite handy. Next is email filters. So these are all literally my filters that I've set up. And as you can see, although I've set up quite a few email aliases, there's really only about 4 folders here that they all go into. So shopping, so e-receipts, travel, social media, and newsletters. That's it. Which goes back to what I said right at the beginning of my presentation, which is that most email is just incoming sort of faxes and postal mail, sort of a modern equivalent of it. And this has all been really good for my workflow, because now I spend no time at all moving and archiving emails, and I actually spend time reading them and either taking action or deleting them, because they're already in the correct place, and I've got my times allocated where I check those things in my typical working day. And this just shows how email filters are useful, but not if you've got just one email address in a service like Google or Outlook or wherever, because they become useless over time when the sender changes their sending from email address. Now the next is a feature I love, and I wasn't even looking for it. So this is where you can write your email as normal and then hit the encrypt button, which the red arrow was pointing to on your screen. And then you can send someone an email with or without attachments. And when they receive it, they'll have to enter a password that you can set to read it or access the files. Now, I've used this twice already to send important government documents and certificates to certain recipients who needed them urgently. I think I was overseas for one of them, so it was really handy. And from memory, I think you can automatically set rules on how long that password protected email can be accessed for as well, just like with the burner email address. Next is another thing that I didn't really think about when I signed up, was a free email migration tool. It's brilliant, works really well. I imported all my Gmail emails over using this service, and it's very quick and easy to do, and it's all included within the paid service that you buy from StartMail. Next is another feature I love, which I didn't know about, is clicking a link, say in a newsletter, which I've done right here. This is an email that was in my inbox this morning, and it shows you the URL that it's about to take you to on your web browser. So this is great to prevent phishing or hacking by ending up on a malicious site. And it's just a great final layer of protection from getting hacked if you know what to look for, obviously. If you're not so technically inclined, it may not make too much of a difference, but it's something that I really personally like. Next is setting up IMAP for Apple Mail. So when you want to set up email on your devices, you'll get a unique password which you can enter, and that password can't be used again. As you can see here, you can't even view the password again that are already in use on your devices. And I really love this feature because I now don't get constantly bombarded with warnings to relog into my email again and again, like I do with Google Workspace and Gmail and Outlook. I haven't set up StartMail on Outlook or Thunderbird, so I'd love to hear your experiences if you've done that. Please comment below. Let us know your experiences with those email clients if you use them. So next I want to move on to what could be improved. Bearing in mind I've only been using StartMail for about sort of 4 to 6 months, I think. So although I'm very happy, there are some things I'd like to see improved. So the first one is a better warning when you sign up for your 7-day trial. that you cannot change your login email address. So I realized this halfway through my 7-day trial. So I made sure that before the billing cycle began, I deleted the account completely, set up a brand new 7-day trial account with the email address I was comfortable with having as a login address, and one that I wouldn't ever use to communicate with anyone. So all that StartMail needs to do is just make it much more obvious and bigger and in flashing lights or something. Next, this is what I'd really like, is help with managing email alias categories. So as you saw on my screenshot earlier, although I have lots of email aliases, most of them are only going to sort of 4 or 5 folders, shopping, newsletters and travel and stuff like that. And I would love the ability to create that email filter rule on the same screen that's used to create the new email alias. And that would save me having to go through a different tab and setting up the rule manually. And lastly, in the web view, potentially having email threading. Now, it would be a nice to have for me because most of my emails are just shopping receipts and things like that. But on the odd occasion where those purchases need to turn into a customer service engagement and I need to actually reply from that email alias, it would be nice to have email threading. Again, it's not a deal breaker for me because I said I use StartMail as a fax machine and a postal delivery service and not as a communication tool. So I can let that one go. Some of you might be asking, well, why didn't you look at any alternatives for StartMail? I did briefly. I looked at things like ProtonMail and FastMail, etc. But I want to go through the reasons I just stuck with StartMail after the 7-day trials. So firstly is simplicity for my use case. It's just for incoming email. Okay, and it's great at that. Next is unlimited email aliases. I didn't ever want to be in a situation where it would take me ages to try a business idea or hassle, or just be in this position where I'm limited in any way. I will never use more than probably 20 or 30 email aliases anyway. I think at the moment I've only got about that, but that's not the point. The point is I don't want any limits. I love privacy. The password protected emails was great. I love the fact that they use PGP encryption. No one within StartMail, is my understanding, can see any of my emails or content. And there's no AI model training. So that's really important as well, especially for healthcare and finances and taxes. And lastly, it was just an easy setup. Setting it up on my MacBook, my iPhone and iPad, it was just so simple. And using the web console is very simple as well. So what are the next steps for you? I would go and listen to some podcasts by one of the founders of StartMail. So that's Dr. Katherine Albrecht. And, I was shocked when she was discussing just how deep the level of surveillance is through our emails. She's explained how they're being constantly scanned, and companies who buy that data are inferring information and all sorts of connections about everything in our lives, especially health and finances. And these assumptions are then being used against us, and may be things like higher premium through health insurance, etc. So I'd highly recommend that you listen to her speak as a guest on many podcasts that she's been on, not just on Apple Podcasts, but on YouTube as well. Next, just sign up for a 7-day trial. It's free. I don't have any special discount codes because I'm actually just a happy StartMail customer. But if they do send me one after making this video, I'll put it in the description box below if they do, but I doubt it. Before I go, I just want to make clear that I still have my Google Workspace account because my annual plan expires in November this year, in 2026. But because of all this stuff that I've set up in StartMail, I actually only have very few emails going into there right now as well. But what's really key is my calendar and contacts are all synchronized in that account. And I'll have to have a little bit of a think about migrating those to Apple iCloud and using their calendar and contacts management so that everything stays in sync with my phone and iPad. Backing up that data is really easy. So it's not a major concern if I cancel my Google Workspace subscription later this year. And actually, Google Gemini has been very helpful in one scenario where I've been involved with others in my area fighting the local council. And it's actually brilliant to fight a government organization using AI, because that is when a tool like that really comes into play, because you can't know all the rules and regulations that a government does. But AI certainly helps level things up when you're communicating with government officials. So yeah, that's it. Let me know if you'd like me to answer any questions in the comments, or if you'd like me to make a follow-up video. My contact details are below, as I said earlier. So thanks for watching. I hope this helps you make a decision. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.